And I really couldn't talk about it because I had suppressed it for so long, I didn't even know I had. When you go through trauma, you don't even know that you're going through it. And when we talked, it was like a mirror right in front of me, and everything come back. It just came back. And that's why I said I never cried.
Welcome to GBH. My name is Lee Hill, Executive Editor for GBH News. 20 years after Brown versus Board of Education and 10 years after segregation was outlawed in Massachusetts public schools, Black parents partnered with the NAACP and went to court to integrate Boston's deeply segregated schools. Judge Arthur Garrity ruled in the parents' favor and came up with the plan to desegregate Boston's schools, send Black students to white schools and white students to Black schools. That was 1974. 50 years later, what became known as busing remains a defining chapter in this city's history. And as a city, we continue to grapple with that legacy.
Thank you so much for joining us. My name's Emily Judum. I'm a senior digital video producer at GBH News, and I produced Never Cried along with my very talented colleague Stephanie Leiden, who is also here. Hi, Stephanie. And now it is my great honor to introduce our panelists, who really need no introduction because you just saw a half-hour film about them. But I will introduce them nonetheless. Leola Hampton.
Hello. Thank you all for coming on this Tuesday night when you could have been anywhere. So I am eternally grateful. Thank you.
And I will also add that I think congratulations is in order because Leola just came from the State House where she won the Living Histories of Color Award today.
Is Marcia still here? Oh, yeah, she's right there. Marcia, she is, I think she's here somewhere.
She's right there in the corner.
Oh, there she is right there. She is responsible. So I am just so grateful. She heard the story and the rest is history. So thank you, Marcia.
Thank you, Marcia. Thank you for being here also. Linda Starks-Walker.
Hi, everybody, and again, thank you so much for coming. Thank you that we can be a part of this to tell our story. Thank you. Appreciate it.
And Maya Scott is here with us.
Hello. Thank you, everyone, for coming.
And Dr. Gary Bailey, who's the MSW Program Director at Simmons School of Social Work. So I want to start off the panel discussion this evening by acknowledging how much time Leola and Linda and Maya spent with us and let us into their lives and follow them around with a camera for many months, which is not easy. And I'd like to think it's just because you liked us. But
Definitely.
You're right.
I don't actually think that that's the case. I think, Leola, part of the reason that you let us into your life is because you really wanted to share your story and start a conversation about the legacy of busing in Boston. And so I think I will start off with a big question here, which is, do you think that Boston is ready for a new conversation about the busing crisis and its legacy?
I was until last Tuesday, but that's another. But I think so. I want to be hopeful. Just how I met you guys, we were on a Zoom. I started to talk about busing, and I don't know what I said in that conversation that ignited you to just want to dive deeper into my story. So just based on the fact that you decided to take this a bit further tells me that people are ready for the conversation. So,
well, just to set the record straight, we kept Leola on the phone for an hour and a half in our first Zoom call and asked her questions about every facet of her life, and she still answered the phone when I called again. So thank you, Leola.
You are welcome.
Linda, related to this, I'm curious. One of the things that I was really struck by when we talked to you at first was that this was the first time you had publicly spoken about your story. And I'm curious why you thought that now was the time that you wanted to share your story.
Remember when you guys came to the house, I was like, why now? Why 50 years? What happened after we graduated? Why didn't somebody come to our aid first year, second year, third year? And I really couldn't talk about it because I had suppressed it for so long, I didn't even know I had. When you go through trauma, you don't even know that you're going through it. And when we talked, it was like a mirror right in front of me, and everything come back. It just came back. And that's why I said I never cried. And I just boo-hooed, tears came down because I could so vividly see coming up that, I think going up that hill played a big part of my life. Going up the hill, and I never saw the sidewalk because the people were there all the time and going through the school, going through the metal detective. It was just something I can't even talk about. But going through those metal detectors, going to your classroom, you don't know what's going to happen. Like I said, I thought that was a welcome committee. I saw them, I said, oh, wow. Then we got up the hill, and then I heard all this. I said, no, that's not it. That's not it today. But I thought tomorrow, the next day would be better. But it continued on for the 2 years that I was there. And I was talking to my sister-in-law, Grace. She said, yeah, you went through trauma. And people that go through trauma, they go through different stages of it. And I didn't know I had suppressed it so long. And yeah, after I talked to you guys, I was better able to talk to my sister, Callie. We talked for a long time. And everything just came out. And I feel much better about it. I really do. Consider it in my story.
I was curious if you had had any other conversations about your experience since we talked. It sounds like you have with some family members.
I did. I talked to the kids, Subi's World kids, and they were like, 50 years? That's too long. Oh, wow. What's 50 years? And they would ask me, did you cry? How did you feel? And I told them, and some of them hugged me and made me feel good. Yeah.
That's really lovely. Dr. Bailey, one thing that didn't make it into the film that I'm curious about is in 1974, you told me that in 1974 you were a student at Tufts. Mm-hmm. And though you weren't involved in the busing crisis at all, it still affected you deeply. Could you talk a little bit about that? What was it like at that time to be a young Black man in Boston experiencing this secondhand?
You know, being a college student and being a college student in a city that's not your own is really both scary and exciting. I mean, that's part of why kids leave home, is so that they can discover. But coming to Boston, Boston's always, I'm from Cleveland, Ohio. We had a different political sense of ourselves in Cleveland. We had elected a mayor. We understood the role of political power, and that was missing here. And I have family here, so I understand the connections. But being in Somerville and Medford, those were in a college town. So being a townie and being a college kid is also complicated as well. And I can remember, not unlike other institutions have done, of being on that hill and the gates needing to be closed because we didn't know what was happening, right? And so this sense of not wanting to go out into spaces that you didn't know, you couldn't control. And it's really hard, and I'm going to say this here because I think it's really important to say, to a person of color, when you look out and see a sea of white faces, it's really hard to tell the good person from the bad person until you're in a position where you can't control what's going to happen to you. And for people who see themselves as being good people, that's only right for the moment, because in effect, you don't know exactly what you'll do to help any of us either when the situation turns or comes. And I think that there were people who thought they were good people in South Boston. They went to church, they'd done this, they'd done that. But when push came to shove, they went with the mob because the mob is harder to resist, right? And it's also important to remember that Boston was going through another shift, particularly within the Irish community, we had Cardinal Medeiros. People forget about Cardinal Medeiros, but he was the first non-Irish cardinal archbishop who was not being treated well either. So he didn't have the kind of moral authority that previous cardinals and archbishops had because he wasn't part of the community that had heretofore been part of the Irish Catholic establishment. So a lot was happening, but it prepared you then for when Charles Stewart happened. You understood the lay of the land. So that there are lots of ways in which this played out for those of us who were observing it and had the privilege to be in a setting that allowed you to observe and you weren't caught up in it.
Did these experiences influence your future work? You study the intersection of race and trauma. I'm curious if that played into what you ended up doing for work.
Well, I mean, I'm a Black man in America, so everything up to that period had contributed to that. But I think that we live in a world and in a country where we still aren't comfortable having conversations about race and the ways in which race and racism and anti-Blackness, which is and white supremacy, affect the core of our being and the lexus of our control. And so, I always wanted to help people. I was going to be a physician, and I took a course. And right around, I went to college in 1973, busing 74, and then taking a winter intercession class with a woman named Jane Greenspan. I'll never forget her name. And she was a social worker. I'd never heard of a social worker in a positive way. Social workers were people who came to your home to take your kids away, see if you had a telephone, see if there was a man in the house. I mean, that's what social workers did. They weren't helpful, right? But what she talked about was something that I wanted to do, and I'd always been the person that people shared their confidences with, and I thought, this is it, right? And so, yes, they kind of connected and helped one another.
I'm curious, given the amount of attention that your mom's story has gotten in the last year and how much your mom has shared with us and with other outlets and in other forums, has your perspective on your mom's story changed at all?
I don't know if I can say I had a strong perspective on her story prior to all of this. I can say that I read All Souls, and I'm sorry for this list that I got right now, y'all. But I read All Souls in high school. It was required reading, and if you don't know it, it's basically the busing story from the other side. What's his name, Mom? Michael McDonald wrote from his side, and he was in Southie. And I just remember being in high school, my mom is on that bus. And that was so interesting to me because she never told it in great detail in the way that it was being laid out in this book. But it didn't it didn't compel me to go be hey, and then on page 56, he talks about blah, 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 where was you at? So I think it's just interesting. I feel like I knew it was sensitive by the way that she talked about it, and that it wasn't something that she really wanted to be dug up. And so I feel like I just respected the speed at which she wanted to give it to me. And I just feel honored to I don't know, for both of us to be here in this time, in this space, and to hear her story and to hear Auntie Subi's story as well. We call her Auntie Subi. Her name is Linda. But yeah, I just feel honored. My perspective is definitely more full and robust now. I think I definitely had pieces of it. So I guess that would be my yes.
I hope you don't mind me sharing that you told me that everyone in your family, all 11 siblings, have nicknames. Oh, yeah. So I believe that is where the Subi comes from. Yeah. But
I'm Dan. That's Dan.
Right.
Yeah.
Leola is Dan. Leola, only one of your many beautiful grandchildren. Can you remind me how many grandchildren you have?
Oh, I have a lot. And Kazia is right there. Wave your hand, Kazia.
Kazia.
My son Jamal, his two children are not here. Quiana, my daughter, her son is not here. Demetrius and Christian, and yeah, I got about 6. How many I got?
Well, of those many grandchildren, only one made it into the film.
Well,
Well,
Kazia is in the film.
Kazia is in the film, that's right.
Yes.
Tyson is in the film, Maya's son. Steals the hearts, I think.
Yeah, somebody at the radio station asked about Tyson. I'm like, who?
Who is crazy?
I believe you told me at one point that there is only one of your grandchildren who currently attends a non-charter Boston public school. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think that was a niece.
A niece
Yeah,
does.
that's a niece because,
Oh,
yeah, all of them. Kazia's in a charter school. Tyson's in,
it's technically, but
what kind of school is he in?
it's like private, but it's through UPK, which is a BPS like program. So it's a little nuanced, but yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's the beauty of the evolution of education in Boston is that now the children have options, and just like every generation gets to advance itself in ways. Whereas, my mother and father, they were sharecroppers. They migrated here with a great migration, and my mother was a living maid for a family in Framingham. So of course, at that time, poverty was a major source of what controlled our lives. And with that, we had to take what we were given and force busing.
And what does it mean to you? What's the significance to you of your grandchildren having other choices?
Oh man, they are amazing. I just look at them and I am in awe. Like you guys said, Tyson, Kazia, everyone calls her a genius because she's, since Kamala didn't make president, Zia probably will.
Yes, Z.
And yeah, my grandson Demetrius is in New York, dancer, and Christian is he's in college in Washington D.C. And my granddaughter JoJo Jordan, she goes to school in Abington. So I just see such a bright future for them. But that future has to contain the history of our people so that, they're not getting into situations where they aren't aware of who they are. I think that's what is most important for me, that they grow with a strong sense of their identity.
Amen.
And Linda, you're also a parent. You have a grown daughter who attended Boston Public Schools as well. And as everyone learned in the film, you also were a teacher at Boston Public Schools for many years. Tell us a little bit about what your experience was like in Boston Public Schools as an adult, as a parent and a teacher.
As a parent, I got the opportunity to say what school Bianca was going to go to from the time she was in kindergarten and all the way up to the 11th grade. And she got a chance to say, I think I want to go to Madison Park High School. Madison Park High School is a good program. It teaches kids tools that, maybe don't want to go to college or say I'm not college material. And at the time, she was modeling on the side, and she had the opportunity to take a picture with the great Judith Jameson, who just passed, of the Alvin Ailey School in New York. And she cherished that to this day. But yeah, and I have another niece that went there, Shay, and she did great. I like Madison. It had a lot of things in that school that kids could use. It was a good school. And myself being a teacher at the EEC, which I think is one of the best schools in Roxbury, and we had kids from Melrose because we had so many resources and so many programs in that school. The teachers were excellent. Kids came in who had Asperger's, autism, HDH, I can't even say it. But we had excellent teachers that were there that were able to help these children. And I was there doing theater, and I remember doing and after school or summer programs where I had nothing but special need children. And I tell you, that was the best program that I did. They could play the guitar. I had them doing dancing, theater, all that good stuff, and they were all special needs because when I got there, the teacher said, "You think you can work with, special needs? All of them are special needs." I was like, "No, I don't have any problem." And one kid liked me so much, he said, "I'm gonna write a song about you, and I'm coming to your home." I said,
Kids don't
"You
got
can
no
write a
boundaries.
song about me, but don't come to my home." But yeah, there are some good schools in Boston Public Schools, and I'm not going to downgrade all of them. There were good schools, and I had my wonderful time at the Haynes Early Education Center. Yeah.
Did he actually write a song? Do you remember?
You did. He said, "Miss Starks, I like you." Oh, man. Yeah.
That's lovely. Oh, everyone gets another taste of your singing voice. That was it. Dr. Bailey, there's something else that didn't make it into the film that I found extremely interesting when we were talking in our interview, and that is this concept of epigenetics. And I am not a social worker or psychologist, and so I will not attempt to explain it, but I am hoping that you could explain it to our audience as you did so eloquently to me, and how it might help us understand the busing crisis and intergenerational trauma.
I mean, epigenetics is pretty basic. I mean, we're really talking about the concept of our genetic makeup, and we know more and more. And I'm not a geneticist, so let me not pretend. But looking at genetics, we know that our genes are marked by trauma, and I'm influenced by the work of Dr. Rachel Yehuda, who was at Cleveland Clinic, and she studied the ways in which the genetic markers on people who survived the Holocaust. And then really looking at the ways in which some of those markers, behaviors, the trauma that was passed down along generation, and the people don't know the triggers. And so I began to think about that, as did she. Okay, so we're looking at the Holocaust, which is, it's relatively recent. What might this look like over 400 years of post-slavery, and really looking at those genetic markers and understanding the kind of trauma, the unrelenting trauma that people were under generation by generation by generation, and where you were literally, and I use this language deliberately, being bred with other people who were surviving the same trauma. So you have this genetic makeup that is mixing with each other in ways that don't allow you to be able to step back from it, to be able to ever recover, nor are you given permission to be human enough to need to recover. And as a way of surviving, you detach yourself, you desensitize yourself from the feeling, or else you can't survive. You'd be overwhelmed by those feelings. Now, you can recover. This is not a place that you're fixed forever. And so in the right environment, it's not nature versus nurture. It's the ability of us all to have the ability to recover. But we do know that there are some ways in which your genetics can be marked that are much harder. Malnutrition, for example, marks your genetics in a way that it is not readily recoverable. We know that someone who is low birth weight, a low birth weight baby, though you may change your class status and other things and move in different directions during your lifetime, your genes are marked in a way that from very early on that you don't outgrow that marker, and that marker can be passed on to someone else. And so it's really important to look at the ways in which intergenerational trauma is cumulative. And so we know that people who have experienced trauma are more susceptible. So anyone, let's use this as an example. We've all gone through a traumatic moment that was called the pandemic, COVID. It's shared traumatic experience. We know that people with pre-existing trauma are having a much harder time as a result of, because it's trauma overlaying on top of trauma, right? And so it is a much harder thing to shake off and to recover from. And Resma Menachem talks about, who's a trauma specialist, another social worker out of Minneapolis, there's a certain point at which people begin to say, that's how they are. So trauma becomes culture. And so when we look at, and anytime you hear yourself say, oh, well, that's how those folks are, that's how that community is, step back and say, maybe that's what trauma looks like in that community. And it's not culture. Trauma adapts, and we name it as culture because we don't know what else to call it. So epigenetics is that concept, right? And so it's really important for us to understand that it is just not something you shake off, that you get over. And so the importance of being able to name, debrief, and to think of trauma as being a wound that has some sort of something in it. It's very painful when you go to debrief a wound, but it can't heal until you debrief it. And most of us avoid the pain of the debriefing of the wound because it's too painful, without understanding that it's only going through that pain that we can actually heal.
Thank you for that. That was. I'm so glad I did not attempt to explain that.
There's a lot.
Linda and Leola, I will ask both of you this question, and either or both of you feel free to answer. Tell us a little bit about what it was like to go back to South Boston High School after all those years. I know that, we in our conversations over many months, you both weren't sure if you wanted to go back, and then you decided that you did. But of course, it was still a scary thing to do. So I'm curious kind of what the experience was like from your point of view, and if it changed anything for you moving forward.
For me, the school looked extremely small compared to how large it looked when I was 14. But I think she and I both had this same feeling, like, so this is what the streets look like, because they were always flooded with people. I never knew what the sidewalks looked like or anything like that. But going back, I was able to leave it there. Like the doctor said, the trauma, it's in my life. I understand that. But I just remember coming from the trauma of South Boston, just really searching for an answer, trying to understand why. And that's when I just really took a deep dive in Black history. I went back to Thomas Jefferson, and one of the Dred Scott case, it just kind of cemented for me what I kind of associated how the people in South Boston, because Dred Scott was, trying to free himself. He went through the Supreme Court, and one of the justices said, there is nothing about a Black man that a white man should respect. You were here for just a piece of merchandise to be sold wherever necessary. And I would always think back like, so this is what they think of us. It's never been discussed. It's never been dissected. It's never been asked to say, can you forgive us for our thoughts on, you as a human being? But those are the things that resonate in me. And but I've freed myself from South Boston. It does not hold me hostage anymore.
Yes.
Because I think that's what happens with racism. When you're seeped in it the way we were, it causes you to disassociate. And that's what I tried to do. But I'm like, I'm human. I'm loved. I come from a great family, and I'm good with it. I'm sorry I took too long. Go ahead.
No, it's fine. Thank you. Myself, I was very reluctant to go back because, like I said, since I suppressed it so long, how am I going to feel? What it's going to look like? Again, I think it's that hill that just kept getting me. So we were coming up the hill, and like Leola said, I was like, wow, the school is so small. And then I could see the sidewalk and remember the guy that was the garbage man. He came by and said, how you guys doing? That shocked.
Because we weren't used to people being kind to you.
No.
Like, who would speak to you?
Yeah, and remember the other side of the school that you told me when the kids came out? I never saw that part. But it was a weird feeling. And again, when we saw the Black Lives Matter, and I was like, wow, this is great. Like like Leo, I left it there. But I think that's why I gravitated to the kids so much, because the 2 years, it just seemed like it took my childhood.
It did.
I didn't get a chance to, like I
Innocence
said,
was gone for us.
it's gone. I didn't get a chance, and I keep saying that. I didn't get a chance to go to the prom. I went to the graduation, but I was upset because I didn't get a chance to throw the hat up. I had to leave because of what was going on there. Oh my God. Yeah.
And I just think, when you see different documentaries, you see the rocks, but no one talks about, our courage.
Right.
What we endured.
Endured.
And to be able to come through that hole is a miracle.
It's a miracle. Thanks. Yes. Woo! It was quite an experience, that's all I can say. But we moved on.
Maya, I'm curious if going back to South Boston for you, South Boston High School for you, if that changed anything for you.
Not necessarily. It was interesting to see them go back. But I would play basketball games at South Boston, and so I guess I saw it change. Like I knew it was separated into 3 different schools and like all the things. But then to go back, and I would say I'm definitely like an empath. So even like driving up, I feel like I could feel my mom's energy was just like off, and I just felt like I was sitting in the car with like a little girl, and I'm like, are you okay? Like, I'm like, it's okay for this little girl to cry, it's okay
that
for
was
her to feel
crazy.
scared.
She told me to embrace the 14-year-old girl in me. No one had ever told me to do that, and my daughter says, Mom, feel her.
Because
So,
it's
that
like,
was
to
deep.
me, it's so interesting. Like you talk about being courageous, and the fact that that's expected of you all the kids who were expected to get on that bus day after day after day with these people outside screaming. It's very interesting to me what is required of Black children. Like even to this day, it's like, you can take it, you'll be fine. You know what I'm saying? And the fact that even Auntie Subi says, like, why 50 years? Why not 2 years after? Why not 3 years after? Did anybody come check on us to make sure we were okay and that we still wanted to go to school and do things like that? And I think it's because Black children are adultified and we are expected to just keep trucking along, and that will be fine. And I don't know why I feel compelled to say this, but it is the fact of how white children can't be taught about the critical race theory because they're kids and they're children. And it's like, you call white boys children until they're 20 years old. That man is not a kid. That is a man. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And it just really is amazing to me how you guys have persevered, and but you shouldn't have had to go through that.
And can I piggyback on that? I do remember when things had got so, when the fights were crazy and they break out and it got so bad, and there would be a phone call, the buses would come and get us, and we had the opportunity to go to the Harriet Tubman House, and we had Blacks who would talk to us, calm us down. How did it go? How are you feeling now? And that stuck with me a long time. We did have something, caring about us. Let us talk. I thank God for that.
May I add a quick comment? I think this captures what's really so important, is the belief that somehow Black people don't feel pain. Black children don't feel pain. Look at the Boston Children's Hospital study about the mismanagement of pain medication in Black children, because white physicians and practitioners overestimate the pain tolerance of Black kids. And so not following DRGs around a ruptured appendix, because it's believed that we can tolerate greater pain. And in some ways we do, because we have no choice, which only makes it more real. But that tolerating of pain has an enormous consequence in the numbing, in the ways in which we don't connect in our own families and communities, the ways in which we look at life in terms of a shortened nature, because we've been numbed. over centuries.
Which comes from Thomas Jefferson, who said black people don't feel pain. Well, not to the extent where, other people do, but yeah, it's a long history.
Thank you so much, everybody. I want to make sure that we have some time for questions from the audience. We have time for a few questions here. And I think there are some volunteers in the aisle. So if you have a question for anyone on the panel, please feel free to raise your hand and someone will bring you a mic.
Thank you so much. And thanks for being here. You're teaching us about our history, right? We can't stay away from it. We cannot change it. Hopefully, the deniers are learning from it. And to see to it, our future, it's much better than what it was. And this is for all of you, and most certainly for Dr. Bailey. And black people, we are seen as less than human, right? We don't feel pain. I'm looking at black maternal health. It's the same history, right? What's her name again? She played tennis. What's her name again?
Serena Williams.
Yes, right? And well known, and she has made a good life for herself because she has worked so hard. Yet she was expecting, and she was treated less than human, right? So as you mentioned, Dr. Bailey, this is part of our history. This is what people see us, the way they feel us, and that goes way back on the land, right? As slave, right? We can say. And we still have a way to go. We still have a way to go.
Yeah, and a quick response. There are lots of studies that have looked at, so let's look at women. The same education, black woman, white woman, same education, same insurance, all those things being similar. And the black woman will have poor health outcomes than the white person because they are seen as being less and get lesser care. And, one can debate all these things. I'm looking at meta-analysis of outcomes, just looking at data, not looking at individuals. I'm a data wonk, so I like to look at what the data tells me. And then the data doesn't lie. And the data leads us to disparities and poor outcomes. And so you then ask yourself, what's in that? It's the ways in which people exist in the world who see themselves as being helpers, but who have not gotten rid or taken the time to attend to the inherent biases that they have as part of their lives that tell them this matters, that doesn't. And that, when people talk about why black people don't trust medical care, medical system, they always want to default to Tuskegee. No, it's what happened to Mrs. Jones last week when she was not treated well at your facility is why people don't trust it. So, because it's easy to go to Tuskegee, it's easy to go to Little Rock, it's easy to go here, because that means we don't have to look at what's happening here and now. Period.
Thank you for that, Dr. Bailey.
Hi, I just want to thank you. I was in Boston through this trauma that you were put through. I grew up in Washington. I was sucked into the civil rights movement as a high school student and then a college student. I spent time in Mississippi and Alabama. And when I came here, I saw the most virulent crowds, much more than anything I'd seen in the South, to be honest. I was up at South Boston as an activist. And it was terrifying. It was absolutely terrifying. And nobody was directing anything at me. It was just terrifying. So I came here. I was very involved in the movement. I helped organize some big demonstrations to try to support you all, with what you were going through. And I had a bunch of things I wanted to say, but after listening to you and watching this wonderful film, I just want to say thank you. You don't realize the impact. History was being made. It started in the South, and you were an important part of a world historic movement. And to people like me, who were participating and organizing demonstrations with Tom Atkins of the NAACP and others. You were our heroes. I never met you. I never saw your face, except, well, maybe I did through a school bus window, but you were the people that made me feel that we can change this world, that if these young children have this kind of courage, I mean, nobody should have to go through that. And anyone who does is marked for life. But you did it. You did it, and you had an impact on millions and millions of people, just like me, and millions of people who were on the other side, who were forced because of what you did to look at what this society really is and whether these inequities that are built in to the system are sustainable and justifiable, and to look at you as human beings. There are plenty of people who were in those crowds who understand to this day now, because of you, that you are human beings. In fact, one of their grandchildren might marry one of your grandchildren. And I can tell you, I moved to Boston in 1971. I'd never seen such a segregated city. It was much worse than any city I was ever in the South. And you busted that up. You can't go anywhere in the city now without seeing mixed race children, mixed race couples. You did that. You did that. No law. And I just want to thank you for being a hero for a lot of us and for doing what you did.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I am shaking because I graduated in '72. My father was murdered. He's a civil rights activist. His name is one of those plaques around the Embrace statue. And I was 13. My father was one of the architects, along with Ruth Batson and Ellen Jackson, of Operation Exodus, which became METCO. And he took me out of the schools because he knew that the change wasn't going to happen quick enough for his kids. When you guys were being bused to South Boston, I was working in Columbia Point with the young people in the drug program there. And we were watching kids coming back with glass in their hair and crying, and parents saying, you know, they didn't have a choice. They had to send their kids there. And we were like, are you kidding me? I'd be on that bus and I'd dare them to throw a rock. And then I remember working for the school department and watching Roar undermine busing from inside. They were specifically giving people the wrong information about the schools because they didn't want it to work. And I saw that happening. And then I also worked with a sister who's passed, Audrey Butler, and her job was to she was working for the federal government to monitor busing. And we had to drive out a couple times to South Boston. And it's Mississippi and it's Mississippi. I have never, to have 10 and 12 people deep on both sides calling you nigger and spitting at you and throwing rocks at you. And I remember this guy was on a bicycle next to the car eating a banana and doing monkey. I mean, I had, to see that brazen, blatant hatred to kids who are defenseless. And I'm looking for people now that were in both sides of that conflict. I'm doing a documentary now and about the desegregation of Carson Beach and working in Columbia Point. And so, first off, my hats are off to you, Queens, for going through that, because I saw that. And I was shaking. I was sitting here watching you. I was like, oh my God. And I remember trying to go down Day Boulevard. From Day Boulevard all the way up to South Boston High, there were 10 people, 12 people deep on both sides. And I was like, whoa. And you don't expect to see that in Boston. That's why I still call it Mississippi. I'm also a teacher. I've been teaching for 45 years. Wow. And people that I graduated with from Beaver Country Day School were two of the people that worked with Joe and Angela Cook to found Page Academy. Yeah, I've been around for a while. I thank God that you're so positive, because I'm not. I'm watching the majority of students who are of color. The majority of teachers are not. And they don't know our kids, and they're afraid of our kids. And that school to prison pipeline is real. And the push towards charter schools, there is no information that shows that charter schools are really that much of a better alternative to Boston public schools. But as a teacher and as a parent, because my daughter went to BPS, I went to BPS up to 6th grade, you want the best, and I'm telling you now, it is not. It's just as segregated, but it's underneath the covers. And working with parents and working with students and working with teachers, I'm not tooting my own horn, I'm just giving you some perspective. I'm actually getting my doctorate now in education at Northeast University. I'm traumatized by the stuff that I'm reading about how deep over 400 years, because Boston has the first public school. And what is happening now with the Orange Man administration, I don't even want to say his name and give him any power. Talking about dismantling the Department of Education that's going to devastate public education and stuff. Y'all better stay woke. I mean, this is no joke. We are still going through some of the same stuff, and our kids don't even know. Like this generation, your generation, my generation, we went through remembering white only and colored only. We lived through that. And then trying to teach the other generations about what you've gone through. My grandparents were all Southerners, North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, Mississippi, Alabama. And they couldn't talk about it. So when I heard you guys talking about how you couldn't talk about it, I remember my grandparents not being able to talk about it too, and escaping racial terrorism, to come up here and finding out a different kind of terrorism, and me being a kid having to fight my way across Columbia Road because I wanted to go to the Strand Theater. I remember that, right? And so my hats are off to you. We have to tell our stories. As a teacher, watching this critical race theory and black books being banned because white kids be traumatized, how do you think we were traumatized going through it? And you're traumatized reading about what we went through. Are you serious right now? So, woo. One last thing. I'm gonna say something, y'all ain't gonna like me. White women are the reason Trump is in office. I'm just telling you. When we needed you to be allies with us, and I'm not talking about anybody in this room now, I'm just saying, we stood up for you, and with the pussy hat people and all that other crap, man, and that did not happen Tuesday. And so, as a black woman, as a mother, as an activist, as an educator, we've always known what was up. And black women voted 91%. We have always been woke because we had to be. Our lives and our kids' lives, our grandkids' lives depended on it. Black men, thank you, because 81% of y'all stood with us too. Don't believe the hype. We know what we're facing, and we've been through slavery, segregation, so I ain't really worried about these next 4 years. I'm really not. What else is new? Serious. So to all the co-conspirators, I don't need any more allies that say they agree with me. I need co-conspirators that want to fight with us. And there are some white people, white women that have been there. Seriously. So thank you. But the sisters, the kings and the queens, thank you. And I really appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we have time for one or two more questions here.
Hi. Excuse me. I wanted to come tonight because I actually went to Boston Public School as well. I went probably 10 years after the crisis. And in that, just as a kid, you're not taught about what happened 10 years before, right? And I noticed actually at the end of the movie that it said that there were a lot less white students in Boston Public School. Well, I mean, that ended up happening 10 years after the crisis. I think as a kid, it's hard. I know that I definitely was picked out because sometimes I was the odd one out, right? I didn't look like everybody else in my class. I had really good friends, and then there were some kids who just was like, I see you, and I don't like you because of X. And you're like 8 years old, and you're like, what, So, I mean, it does. I mean, 50 years, I'm not surprised. And I'm glad to hear your stories. I'm glad for you to share them. But there's a lot of stuff out there. I mean, as I got older and got out into the world, I realized that just because someone looks like me doesn't mean they had the same experience I did. I mean, some of the stories that I have, they're blown away. At one point, I was an independent teenager, and I did end up going to another course to college in Boston, and it's a charter school, and I thank God for that opportunity for me to have gone there, because there's no reason I should have dropped out of school, but without that charter school, I probably would have dropped out with everything else that was going on in my life. And so when we talk about like politics and stuff, I know that there's a lot of people who are saying like, oh, charter schools are no good, charter schools are no good. A lot of people I went to school with, they're like, we never would have got through school if it wasn't for that choice. And I think that parents need to have choices, kids need to have choices. And for what you went through with like piles deep of people being not people, they were horrible. But no kid should ever have to be afraid of anything going to school. But today, it's still too many are. There's still stuff going on. People are getting in fights on buses. Boys are attacking girls. Like, this stuff happens today. And Boston is a very segregated city. And I didn't really know that either. I ended up being very lucky and going to grad school. And a lot of the people who came to grad school here, I mean, some of them I brought to certain towns, and they didn't see these towns, because when they come to visit, these are not places that they go to. I mean, I don't want to go on too long, and I don't want to take away from anything else that anybody else said, but there's so much out there that's happening right now, and so many people do not know. And I'm really glad that you shared your story, and I wish I learned it when I was in school. I wish I knew that when I was a kid going to school.
Thank you so much. Thank you for that. That is all we have time for tonight. Thank you so much for joining us, and especially thank you to our panelists and the stars of our film. Thank you so much.
Thank you.